Welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. How you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm doing pretty well, Alan. How are you guys down there?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's getting to be summer, though. It's already in the upper 80s, a lot of humidity. Just not fun. Not fun. It's already telling me it's going to be, although we do have a cool front, not a cold front, but a cool front. That means low humidity, temperatures in the 70s, but it feels more like the 70s, not like the 90s. Like today, it felt like it was 95. So, Bob, we put the nail in the coffin on Derek Carr. No sooner is the dirt on the coffin than the national media starts with, are the Saints going to probably make a trade for Jameis Winston? Are they going to look at the, the Browns quarterback room and maybe get Joe Flacco? I don't know what they want. They claim that the Saints need to stop and rebuild, get rid of all their star players. We just had the whole, is Chris Olave going to get traded? Rumor going along. What do they expect out of this? What are they looking for us to try and do?
Well, you mean the national media?
Yeah.
The national media, there's two things going on with them in regards to the New Orleans Saints right now. One, they're bored this time of year, so they're just reaching for stories. They don't do like us in the local media do, and actual work, analysis, and in-depth reporting. God forbid. And two, and this has always been the case with the Saints. The national circles, fans, media, and outlets. They want the Saints to be irrelevant, so that way they don't have to talk about them. They want to talk about the New Yorks and the Chicagos and the LAs and the Goodell favorites, Kansas Cities and Chargers and etc. But the Saints have talented players, and that's why year in and year out, Cam Jordan's going to get traded, Alvin Kamara is going to get traded, Demario Davis is going to get traded or cut, and before that it was Mark Ingram, and year after year the Drew Brees trade rumors. That's why the national media does that, because they hope that the Saints trade these players to one of the teams that they enjoy covering, one of the teams that the Dallas Cowboys, throw them in the mix too. One of the teams that are in NCAA basketball, they're called the Blue Bloods. So we can call them the Blue Bloods of the NFL too. It's lazy reporting. You mentioned the Chris Olave trade rumors. There was never anything substantial to that. It was, ironically enough, a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in that shock jock. Just throwing it out there, and and again, God forbid these guys do actual work. It's one thing, and you did it when you wrote too. I do it now. We write editorial articles, editorial pieces, opinion pieces, pieces like, hey, it would be a great idea if the Saints traded for so-and-so, or released so-and-so and went after this guy in free agency. But we caveat that with saying, this isn't reality. This is A, either wishful thinking, or B, if this and this falls right. The difference between us doing that and making it quite obviously an editorial or an opinion piece is that we present it that way. These lazy, dumbass, moronic shock jocks, and I'm not just talking 93.7 The Fan, they're everywhere. But they present this like this is actual news, like they have actual sources. They do not. It was literally just them talking on the air, and hey, the New Orleans Saints don't have a quarterback. Meanwhile, the Pittsburgh Steelers have Mason Rudolph.
Right.
But the New Orleans Saints don't have a quarterback, so it'd be a great idea if they traded Chris Olave. And you know what? The Pittsburgh Steelers are interested, and you're hearing it here first. No, they weren't. Pittsburgh Steelers called. Probably a lot more teams than the Pittsburgh Steelers have called on Chris Olave and other people. That is constant all year round, folks. This was never a viable option, and it was probably just the Steelers feeling the Saints and Mickey Loomis out. Hey, is Chris Olave, on the trade market? And hypothetically, what would you take for Chris Olave? Oh, you want that? Okay. Have a good year.
Yeah.
Literally just that.
And it's funny because, if the Saints were even going to trade Chris Olave, the time to have done it was during the draft.
Mm-hmm. Certainly not before they signed him to his 5th-year option.
Right. And if you're going to do that, you're doing that because you're going to get a pick that you want to use on his replacement. Conceivably, if the Saints could have got a 2nd-round pick for him, now the Steelers didn't even have a 2nd-round pick because they already traded a pick to go get Metcalf from the Seahawks. Right. So if they got a 2nd-round pick offer, that would be the ideal time to trade him and go take a receiver in that draft. You get someone younger, cheaper, and healthier. Okay.
Yep, which, by the way, I wouldn't have been against if it happened that way, but here we are.
No, not at all. That makes perfect sense, especially for a rebuilding team, because you're looking at, okay, Olave's got his 5th-year option coming up. Where are the Saints going to be at that point when they're going to have to make that decision to pay him? Are they going to be in a position that they want to pay him? You still have the concussion history and concerns. If he stays healthy all season, maybe his value goes up. Maybe you think about trading him then. There's so many other variables in there, but it made sense during this draft because you can get a receiver, younger, cheaper, and you get at least 4 more years to rebuild the team. Now that has passed, it makes no sense to trade him because it would be a pick for next year.
Yep.
In the meantime, you've got no one. We've been talking about who can the Saints sign to augment this receiving core. So now you're creating 2 holes in the team. None of it made sense. It was a dumb idea thrown out there. So that's the thing that kills me, because on the one hand, they criticize the Saints for refusing to rebuild. And on the other hand, here they are talking about, the Saints don't have anybody at quarterback. They really need to bring in somebody. I know we talked about this last week, but neither situation makes sense. You drafted Tyler Shough with the idea that is going to be your starting quarterback. I know Spencer Rattler's got a shot at competing. So does Jake Haener. And they're willing to let these guys battle it out this summer to see what they have. I still think they do bring in a veteran guy, but as a guy who is furniture. He's in there just it's terrible to say, but it's a guy who understands I'm not going to start unless disaster happens. They're going to rise or fall with Shough. And my job in here is to mentor him and Rattler in the quarterback room, because I'm assuming Haener's the odd man out. But my job is to mentor these guys and tell them what I've experienced in X amount of years as playing as an NFL quarterback. The call was, let's go get Jameis Winston now from the Giants, since they're going to have Dart and they've got Russell Wilson. And we've already had Jameis on this team. Well, that's just it. You've already had Jameis on this team. Even though it's a different coaching staff.
I was going to say, with a different coaching staff.
Yes. Even though it's a different coaching staff, you've got a quarterback now who has started in the NFL, still kind of sees himself as a starter, not going to be a guy who's going to campaign to be a starter, but still kind of sees himself as somebody. He's not ready to be the guy who is the mentor and the furniture in the background. And my other issue with that is, if you bring Winston in and he is now your veteran backup, if Shough struggles, which he will because he's a rookie, how long before fans start saying, you know what, we're not winning anything anyway? Bench Shough. It was a mistake to draft him. We should have drafted Shedeur Sanders. We're going to draft Nussmeier. We're going to draft Aller, the tank for Arch, whatever it is. You pick your cult fandom here, and we'll just ride with we'll ride with Winston because at least he's quote unquote fun. I don't know what's fun about watching a guy throw 6 touchdowns. 3 to your side, 3 to his side, 3 to the other team's side. That's not fun to me, but I guess you play fantasy football, you like that. But yeah, that's not what he wants. He wants a guy who the fans are not going to be chanting to start. A guy that is just there as a coach in that quarterback room and on the sideline with these guys. He wants to see if he can build something with Shough. So that's my concern with a guy like Winston. Even a guy like, in Cleveland, it's Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco. Okay, Joe Flacco fits that profile, but why are you going to trade for him? I wouldn't trade for him. And I can't see Cleveland saying, you know what, we're good. We'll ride with Sanders, Gabriel, and Pickett. That'll be our 3 in there. That's creating what the Saints have right now. Why?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, let's go. Two day 3 picks and a first round bust. Good idea. Yeah, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I knew Anna was going to when I said Nussmeier, but there is a Nussmeier cult out there. Oh
yeah.
They're anxious. There's tank for Arch, and then when you tell them that Arch probably isn't coming out this year, he's probably going to come out in 2027. It's Nussmeier's the guy they know. They don't know any of those other guys yet. That'll change a lot as the season unravels. Unravels. I'm already condemning this team.
Well,
as the season rolls on. And as the college football season goes on and people start watching some of these other quarterbacks, if Shough turns out not to be the guy, there'll be fans divided among all these quarterbacks because I guarantee no one was talking up Cam Ward this time last year as number 1 overall pick. And the expectation to me, it's rebuilding. It's not a divisional title. It's not playoff berth. It's nothing like that. It is strictly rebuilding. You are building a new program. You want to win games, but you're not selling the house to make the playoffs. It's not playoffs and bust. It is, let's see what these young guys can do. And that's the biggest reason why I've got the schedule here, but that's the biggest reason why I'm not even going to go through the schedule because to me, and I don't know how you feel about this, Bob, but to me, I can't predict anything. I can look at the games and go, September's tough. October's got a couple of games they can win. November, maybe. They don't have any cold weather games this year. I think the coldest game they're going to have is at Tennessee, December 28th. But, I mean, you're playing at Atlanta at the final in January. You're playing Carolina and the Jets at home. You play in Tampa on December 7th. That's not bad. South Florida, November 30th, again at Miami. You have no Monday night games, no Sunday night games, no Thursday night games. You're noon and 3 o'clock every day. I mean, every week. It's New England is at home. The Giants are at home. Chicago is in Chicago, but that's in October. You really don't have any cold weather games. Buffalo is in September. Seattle is in September. That could be inclement weather, but I don't even see a Hurricane game in here. Honestly,
No.
unless one hits New Orleans. But I mean,
Yeah.
but as far as bad weather games, but I don't know. It all depends on health and Shough. I mean, that's the two. That's the two question marks. So, I mean, Bob, how do you look at this schedule and look at this team? What do you think?
Well, Jordy Hallberg pointed out to me this morning that the over/under right now on the Saints wins this year is 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
And without too much hesitation, I said that, at least looking at the team right now, that I would go over. I still don't look at this roster and think it's a playoff team, but I don't think it's completely devoid of talent to the point of a 2 or 3 win team, like a lot of doomsday fans are singing right now. I mean, we saw how talented this team was when they were healthy for a stretch last year. And that was with bad coaches. I'm not saying Kellen Moore is a great coach. We shall see. But to your point, there are just so many new variables and the new and unknown variables. A rookie quarterback, a first year head coach, an entirely new staff. You still have an aging defense, but you brought in some young pieces. How's the offensive line going? How quickly is the offensive line going to gel? And above all else, I go back to the Saints have some talent in a lot of places, but they're not deep anywhere. So you get a couple key injuries and you're done for. But like you said, I look at the schedule when it first came out, and the first thing that jumped out to me is the Saints only have 4 games against playoff teams from a year ago.
Yeah.
And 2 of them are Tampa. So you're really 3 playoff opponents. And you're on top of that, they faced 2 additional teams that had winning records, 9-8 records last year. So on paper, it's not a tough schedule. And, like you said, September looks like a gauntlet. I expect the 49ers to be a lot better. I'm not as high on the Cardinals as some people are, but I do expect them to be an improved team. And I definitely don't think the Sea Hags are going to be a very good team. But you're going to Seattle. And then to Buffalo in September, in weeks 3 and 4 after you open up against the Cardinals and 49ers. But then you look at October, and you like the Giants, they're awful. The Patriots, they might be worse. The Bears, they're still not a good team. And then you go Bucks and Rams. But Giants, Patriots, Bears, and again you think, well, they're bad teams, but then it hits you. How much better are the Saints than these teams, really?
Right.
And that's the key to the win total right there. To hold serves against teams that you should beat. And I could say the same thing about December. You have the Bucks to open up December at Tampa Bay, where you've been playing pretty well. Lost close games, but you played well. And then the last game in November is at Miami. I don't think Miami is going to be a very good team. And then after the Bucks, you're home Panthers, home Jets, at Titans. Panthers, I do expect to be an improved team. Jets are awful. Titans are awful. But again, are they are they going to be as bad or worse than the Saints? That's the key to the schedule again. And I think it was you, Hemisphere, but whoever made the comment is, what are the Saints actually shooting for? Alan just said it. They're not acknowledging a rebuild. But I think with the moves that they are making, the drafting of a rookie quarterback, they are finally acknowledging we don't believe that we're a playoff team, a perennial playoff team, an automatic playoff team right now. Does that mean that they could sneak in there? Sure. Sure. And, we just laid out the schedule as to the reasons why. But I mean, ultimately, I believe, that the Saints' goal is to be a tough out for every single opponent this year and to be a better team at the end of the year than they were at the beginning. If you have progress and your young players, not just the rookies, but these second and third year guys who we've seen little to nothing from, you get development from them, then you're on the right track. Then all of a sudden, for 2026, you could start talking about, okay, our goal is the playoffs, or our goal is the division title, etc.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I feel. I mean, Hemisphere said it right. I think five wins is probably the floor, 7 is the ceiling, and I think that's a fairly good goal. I think between 5 and 7 wins, depending on development and health, that this team can do. There are a lot of questions on defense, obviously, aside from age. Did they get guys in that can stop the run better? Can they rush the passer? How good is with Dennis Allen? You kind of had a feeling the defense was going to figure things out. Now you got a new defensive staff and you're going to a different scheme. How well does this defense respond? And how well do these players fit in? And we're going to talk about some guys that are on the bubble, because to me, Isaiah Foskey is a huge question mark right now, because you're going to a scheme that he should be successful in. You really don't have any pass rushers. You didn't draft any pass rushers. You drafted a guy in the 7th round, but he's more likely to be a special teams guy than a starter. So who are going to be the pass rushers in this team? Who's going to stop the run? Asante Samuel showed up at Saints facility last week, talking about recovering from his neck surgery before he makes a decision. But who's going to be that cornerback opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry? How does Kool-Aid McKinstry respond as now a starter? How does this new defensive back secondary look without Dennis Allen? Because at least with Dennis Allen, you kind of knew the secondary could figure things out. You could make it with an Foskey, a Rico Payton, or a Isaac Gidham, but he's not around anymore. So who is going to be the coach that's going to get the most out of these secondary players and get this secondary organized? So there's questions all 3 levels. I really don't know what this team's going to do. Offensively, does this offensive line stay healthy? Is it going to be Banks at one tackle spot and Fuaga at the other? And where does Penning fit in this? Are they going to try and leave Penning on the right side and stick Banks in at guard? What are they going to do there? I don't know. And you're not going to know this until well into training camp, because they're going to be playing with these guys, moving them all over the place in every practice. So, I mean, I don't know. It's too hard for me to guess on how this team is going to do anything. There's nothing I can think of they can hang their hat on right now. And I think that's one of the reasons why the other reason why they keep bringing up, well, they need a quarterback. They need this. They need that. And again, that's not what this team is designed to do right now. It's designed to get to the end of the old veterans, those guys you want to replace so badly, get to the end of their careers and start getting their replacements playing time to see what you got with them. And I think that's, like you said, the key is how well do they play in November after Thanksgiving and December versus September, Yeah. So we kind of touched on at least one guy on the bubble. Here we've been going on about all these guys that we're concerned about, but who are some of the other bubble players that you can think of that this is a make or break training camp for them?
I was assigned this as my first article with Saints Wire, which, by the way, no major announcement yet, but I am working for John Sigler over at Saints Wire now. I'll still be writing some pieces for Athlon Sports, but we'll be taking a back seat over there. But anyway, my first assignment over there was, hey, Bob, can you pick up can you pick up something on these Saints players that you think are going to be on the bubble? I'm like, yeah, and right away I thought 4, boom, right off the top of my head, 2 on offense, 2 on defense. And ironically, as I was writing the piece, I knew who I was writing about, but it occurred to me as I was writing, I'm like, all 4 of these guys are from the 2023 draft.
Mm-hmm.
That right there tells you why the team is in the position that they're in, because they haven't drafted well. And that draft in particular, and I was patting myself on the back for getting, I think they had 7 picks that year, and I had 5 of the 7 right, or 4 of the 6 right. I'm patting myself on the back, and now I'm punching myself in the face because I had them right. But what's that say about my own draft analysis? But yeah, I mean, Isaiah Foskey, it's a no-brainer. I mean, he can't get on the field. He can't even play well enough to get on the field for a defense that's aging and underachieved. He's clueless against the run, and is absolutely a non-factor as a pass rusher. Well, some people have said, well, Brandon Staley's coming in. Foskey might fit in as a stand-up rusher. And I said at first, yeah, he might, because he's athletic. And then it hit me. I'm like, then again, he might look worse, because in the preseason, when we have seen the Dennis Allen's staff give him chances, he just looked like he was playing football for the first time. Every time he was in space, and asked to rush around the end or attack the backfield from a wide 9. And is that going to get any better as a stand-up rusher in a 3-4? I mean, I don't know, but if it doesn't, that's going to be his key to the roster. The other defender I outlined is Jordan Howden. I'm not a big fan of Howden, never have been. Not good against the run. He doesn't have the Ole style of tackling that Tyrann Mathieu has developed, but he just takes these awful angles to the football and just runs himself out of position. And and coverage, man, is he a liability? I don't know whether it's awareness, lack of instincts, or lack of read and react abilities, or all 3. But he's become an absolute liability in the secondary. And don't forget, the Saints brought in Justin Reed. They re-signed Hugo Amadi. They still have Matthew. And then they spent a 3rd-round pick on Jonas Sanker, a pick that, if you folks follow my work, I hate. But doesn't matter how I feel. The Saints liked him well enough, Sanker that is, to spend a 3rd-round pick. How is Jordan Howden going to fit in? I know Jordan is good on special teams, and it might take just that. It might take Jordan Howden outperforming JT Gray on special teams to grab. Exactly. But it might take exactly that, to earn a back spot of the roster position. Offense, again, 2 real easy picks for me. Nick Saldiveri on the offensive line. It was very telling that the 2 years that Saldiveri has been in the league, the Saints have had major offensive line issues, whether it's ineffective play or injuries or both. And Saldiveri either can't get on the field or can't stay on the field because he's not playing well enough. He better develop quick. Because, Kelvin Banks, is going to make the roster. Eric McCoy, Trevor Penning, Talise Fuaga, Cesar Ruiz, they're not going anywhere. That's 5 spots, folks. They brought in Will Clapp, a guy who's familiar with Kellen Moore's offense and his blocking schemes. Clapp's not a starter, but former Saint. Clapp's not a starter, but he's a versatile guy that could fill in at all 3 interior spot positions. Landon Young's worked in some versatility, and they brought in Dylan Radins, a former starter, NFL starter too. So again, where's Saldiveri going to fit in? He better develop quick. If he's going to grab a roster spot. And I saved the last for least, because we've seen him on the field least. Kendre Miller. That's a no-brainer to me. The Saints re-signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They drafted Devin Neal, and they signed the undrafted rookie from Delaware, Marcus Yarns. Now, an undrafted rookie, late day 3 pick, by no means are either one of these guys a lock for the roster. But I think it's telling that Kendre Miller is going to have some competition. Forget competition for touches. This is competition to make the football team.
Yeah.
I've never doubted Kendre Miller's abilities, but when you miss 20 out of 34 games, and 3 of those 14 games that he played in, he was out by the end of the first quarter. You have to be able to stay on the field. You have to be able to get on the field. And Kendre Miller hasn't done that. And because he hasn't done it, the Saints have had 0 backfield complement to Alvin Kamara. A sentence that I found myself typing in what feels like about 35 articles this offseason. Edwards-Helaire, Devin Neal, Marcus Yarns, they were brought in to do just that. And again, none of them are guaranteed roster spots. But going back to the point that you made at the beginning of the segment, this is a new coach, new coaching staff. So everybody is on a pretty clean slate.
Mm-hmm.
A 3rd-round pick like Kendre Miller is not safe, because this is not the coaching staff that drafted him. This is not the coaching staff that sat in there in those draft production meetings and said, you know what, he's a perfect fit for our offense. When they got him in the building, we know what he can do. We're just disappointed he can't stay on the field. Yeah, the new coaching staff ain't going to put up with this shit, because they're not the ones that put their reputations on the line by drafting him. Kendre Miller doesn't stay on the field. Kendre Miller doesn't stay on the team.
Yeah, and Hemisphere just remarked that Mike Detillier thinks that he doesn't take this job seriously. Like, I'm a draft pick. I'm gonna, like in college, I'm just gonna hang around because they drafted me. And like you said, this is not the same group that drafted you, so they have no loyalty to you at all. And it's a shame, because in the appearances he's made, you've seen glimpses of his talent. You see the explosiveness. You see good hands. You see the speed. But it does you no good if you cannot stay healthy. And the injuries are not like a blown knee or, a broken bone or something it happens in a contact sport. It's soft tissue issues. It's the inability to stretch properly so your hamstrings don't get hurt. I mean, the most animated Dennis Allen got as a head coach in any press conference was when he was talking about Kendre Miller in the beginning of training camp, because he was pissed that the guy showed up out of shape. And you can't do that. You, as a professional, you don't do that. The days of using training camp to get yourself into shape, that's long gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been gone for 30 or more years. It's year-round conditioning. That's why the NFLPA fought for less two-a-days and fewer padded practices and things like that, because these guys stay in shape year-round. So, I mean, that's your job. As a professional, it's your job to stay in shape. And you're not in shape, So, yeah, it's inexcusable. That's immature. This is your job. This is not like Archie Manning back in happy late birthday, Arch. Archie turned, 78, I think, yesterday. But Archie Manning used to work a second job. He was a car salesman and kind of pitchman for Royal Oldsmobile in the 70s. Most of the players worked a second job because you didn't make that much money in the NFL.
Yep.
That shit's over with. You and I would love to get the minimum salary in the NFL.
Oh, hell yeah.
The jobs we have don't pay that,
No.
In the 70s, I mean, yeah, you just didn't make very much money back then. But and the frustrating thing is, since you brought up that draft class, the frustrating thing is it's not like the Saints went out there and grabbed a bunch of guys from Southwest Missouri State Community College.
Yeah. I mean, you have Foskey, the all-time sack leader at Notre Dame, Kendre Miller, a 1,200-yard rusher for the national runner-up. Howden played for Minnesota, who was competitive in the Big Ten, during his tenure there. Saw a very Old Dominion. Okay,
Yeah.
But the Saints have had great luck with small school offensive linemen, and everybody was high on Saldivari coming into the draft because of how well he played against the quote unquote big school competition.
Yeah.
At the Senior Bowl practices and and postseason workouts. In fact, so much so that the Saints traded 2 picks to move into position to get Saldivari. And we didn't even talk about A.T. Perry because he's not on the team anymore. A.T. Perry, a 2-time 1,000-yard receiver, an ACC leader, in reception yardage with Wake. The only same colors, same uniforms.
Yeah.
The only one that's turned out so far is Brian Bresee, the first-round draft choice
out of Clemson. Yeah. So, you're drafting from well-known, established football schools who turn out good players in general. You didn't reach for anything. I guess Saldivari is the only reach that you really did. There's some people who are still going to beat you over the head because you should have taken Tajay Spears from Tulane as opposed to Kendre Miller. And, of course, Kendre Miller not producing makes it even worse. But, Tajay Spears he is doing okay at Tennessee. Yeah. Tennessee's a bad team, but he is a guy who is playing without an ACL. So I can see why the Saints passed on him. He's not going to be a great rusher with Tennessee this year either. So, I mean, would he have been a better pick for the Saints? Probably, but mainly because, you're not getting anything out of Kendre Miller.
Right.
But the point I was trying to make with all this is the fact that the Saints did not reach for or overdraft players in that draft class. It's just the players they picked are not very good or not producing for whatever reason. I mean, it's amazing to me that Foskey, and I don't disagree with any of the guys you put on this bubble, but it's amazing to me that Foskey, the Notre Dame's all-time sack leader with 26 sacks in 4 years, 2 years, his junior and senior year, back-to-back 11 sacks, and he acts like he's never rushed a passer in his life and doesn't understand the game of football at all.
Yeah.
Angles, anything. That's mind-blowing. That really is. How do you produce at Notre Dame and you cannot do – I mean, you can't even get close to the quarterback. Chase Young, his problem, I always said, was that he has no closing speed.
Yeah, but he's not a finisher.
Yeah, but Saldivari is not even getting there. He can't get off a block. And you can't tell me – at Notre Dame, he didn't face off against NFL-level talent. I mean, you do. So, A.T. Perry, it's so odd about A.T. Perry. He never played for Denver either. He's been on the practice squad the whole time for Denver. I don't know if Denver signed him to, a futures contract or not. A.T. Perry, I don't know what his problem was. Other than he just did not produce in practice. I don't know what it is. He was a gamer.
He did have a lot of bad practices. I know with the Saints. I can't speak about for Denver. I was here. I heard a year after the fact that's why a lot of us, and you sat on our draft show with us that year as I was calling for I had A.T. Perry mocked to the Saints that year in the second or third round, and a lot of people, most draft scouts, had him coming off the board midway to late day 2. He didn't get drafted until late day 3. And we were all wondering on the draft show, why is A.T. Perry still on the board? Why is he falling? Well, we were hearing a year after the fact that, and this is why I'm telling people, you wait a year before you start hearing the accurate things about Shedeur Sanders. But about A.T. Perry, we were hearing he didn't practice well. He wasn't a hard worker in practice, didn't hit the film room real well, excuse me. Well, I mean, those kind of things showed up on the field. Now, he made some beautiful catches. I was excited to see him be a part of Clint Kubiak's offense, but once Clint got here, Clint wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah. To me, that was the most telling thing, because we had heard, and this has something to do with the Hemisphere's comment about DA's lack of personnel management, lack of accountability. You had guys that just did not even turn on their Microsoft tablets to look at film during the week at home. They can track all that. How many times do things come on and what they looked at and things like that. And there were some players that weren't doing that at all. And I think A.T. Perry's name, they didn't say it, but I think he was one of the ones that didn't do it. And kind of, didn't go all out at practice. You compare that to, it's not a fair comparison, but you compare that to Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas treated practice like it was the Super Bowl. He was fighting for every reception. And where did the fight between he and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson happen? In practice, because you had an intense player. And if you start jawing at an intense player, even though he's your teammate, he's going to get pissed off and he's coming after you, because that was how he practiced. That's how he viewed practice. And why did Michael Thomas do what he did on the field? It's because he played the way he practiced. You and I both, you coached at a high school level. I never did, but I coached at, the little league level and stuff. But I always told my kids, practice is the most important part of playing a sport, because if you don't practice well, a coach is not going to put you in the game. Well, if my daughter loved practice, she ate it up. She lived for practice. And as a result, even though she was shorter than most of the players, and even though she wasn't as fast as the other players, the coach put her in all the time because she produced, because she practiced hard. It's not a talent level. It's just somebody that you can trust that kid to go out there and do their job. And you feel confident playing maybe a less talented person, because they're not going to make the mistakes that are going to cost you the game. And that's some players just don't get that, So it's frustrating. It really is, because all the guys that you mentioned, except for Salvadori and a little with Jordan Howden, but all the guys you've been talking about, they should be better players than they are, and they're not. And that hurts even more than overdrafting a guy from Southwest Missouri State Community College, because you're going after a guy that you think should produce, and he has the talent and checks all the boxes and doesn't do it.
Yep.
Peyton Turner is another example.
Oh, perfect. And you look at 2 years later after this draft, after the 2023 draft, and Foskey, second round edge rusher. Well, 2 years later, we're yelling and screaming. The Saints need to draft an edge rusher here. Who's going to rush the passer? Jordan Howden, safety, 5th round. Well, 2 years later, they're drafting a safety in the 3rd round after they spent relatively significant dollars to bring in another Pro Bowl safety. Saldivari, a guard you traded for to move up and get early in the day. I think might even been the first pick of day 3, but it was very early. 2 years later, we both had predicted the Saints could and should draft a guard. Or now that they didn't, which one of the tackles is going to move into guard, because there's no clear-cut starter there. Get Kendre Miller, running back, 3rd round. Well, 2 years later, you're talking, okay, there's no backfield complement to Alvin Kamara. That leaves this offense handcuffed because they telegraph what they're going to do based off of where Kamara is lined up on the football field.
Yeah.
And you say it a million times. If you fail in the draft, you get old quick. You have to spend money and put yourself in cap difficulty because you're paying these aging veterans because you don't have the young talent, the young core talent to develop behind them. That's why we're sitting here talking about, are the Saints even good enough to win 6 games?
Yeah.
That's why this conversation takes place, guys.
Absolutely. And A.T. Perry, who we just talked about, he's not even on the team. What is the thing the Saints need? A
big body wide receiver.
That was A.T. Perry's position. We keep getting beat over the head. Oh, the Saints should have drafted Lamar Jackson. Oh, the Saints should have drafted, Jordan Love. That's a new one that's coming up now. It's always the hits. Yeah, you're right. They should have. But what if they would have taken Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, Mac Jones? Pickett and Jones were guys the Saints were targeting. Mm-hmm. What if the Saints would have taken a quarterback back then? Not the guy that you're saying, because 2020 hindsight, but they go and draft a quarterback as their plan for the future, post Drew Brees, and you get a Salvadori, A.T. Perry, Kendre Miller, Isaiah Foskey. I mean, that's the thing. You can draft a position, but you have no guarantee that guy is going to be the right guy. Mm-hmm. And we can say about this draft class right now, we don't know if Tyler Shough is going to be the right guy.
Right.
It looks like he is. He sounds right, but we don't know what it's going to be like when he gets out in the field. My concern, going back to the draft, is I didn't like the way he flinched when pressure came on him. I didn't like some of the decisions he made when he had when pressure in his face. The injuries don't concern me as much, but I think the injuries also a reason why he flinches a little. I don't know how tough he's going to be against NFL level pass rushes. I hope he's the right guy, but I hope Kendre Miller was the right guy. And I'm not saying that he's going to be that guy, but that's that. Now fans don't even trust the decision-making processes in the draft. You're looking at the guys they draft, and you're going, you and I draft night, 3rd round picks, both of them. Oh, that's not the guy I would have taken right then. There's probably another guy I would have taken over those guys. I mean, I pointed out the cornerback from East Carolina who I liked. You and I both talked about the safety who the Falcons ended up drafting.
Yeah.
Xavier Watts probably is maybe a better player than Sanker, but what do they want to do with him if he would have come to New Orleans? We don't know. Supposedly, all the players they picked were guys that were hard hitters who stopped the run. That's the guys they went after. I love the linebacker from Oklahoma, and he may or may not be the best player in the draft in the entire draft class. I don't know, but I know he can play. We just have to see if he is good enough to make it in the NFL. So that's my problem too. I don't know how many of these rookies make this team. How many of these rookies get positions where they start or play a lot to have an impact on the team, impact on the future. I mean, Anthony Orgy got let go this past week as a way of signing. I think they made room for the running back and the quarterback from the tryout people. Oh, we didn't even talk about the guy from Detroit who was out for a year. Detroit and Cleveland. Peebles. What is
Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Peoples-Jones. That's
their fascination with the hyphenated receivers continues.
Yes. What can we say about Donovan Peoples-Jones? Is he a guy that can do anything? I mean, he's been out of football for a year. He was productive with Cleveland.
He was.
But is he the guy who can be that third receiver?
I mean, I think he'll be in the mix for it. Third or fourth receiver. Physically, he checks off the box of the big-bodied pass catcher that we've all been wondering why the Saints haven't gone after. Because in Cleveland he was productive as a possession receiver. In Detroit he had a couple games. Now, Detroit has a loaded receiving core. So him spending basically a year on the practice squad with the Lions, that doesn't concern me as much as it would maybe with some other teams, because Detroit just had a loaded offense last year. But we were saying the same kind of thing about Valdez-Scantling when the Saints signed him late last year. Was that he's been he had productive years in Green Bay, just like Peoples-Jones had in Cleveland, but he's bounced around the practice squad and been a little bit unproductive the last year and a half. Well, Valdez-Scantling turned out to be a solid pickup. One wonders if that would have looked like as good a pickup had Shaheed, Olave, and Bub Means didn't all get hurt, but that's irrelevant. That's an irrelevant conversation. Peoples-Jones will be given the chance. I know he's not Keenan Allen, he's not Amari Cooper, he's not he's not Boyd, the guy that I wanted. But he checks off that physical box. He's going to look like a man among giants, in those receiver practices, because I think Peoples-Jones is 6'3", and everybody else at the position is 5'10", 5'11" or under. Yeah. I think Means might be listed at 6'1", but I've interviewed him. If he's 6'1", then I'm 5'11", and I ain't 5'11". We'll see. He'll be given a chance. At the very least, he'll push Bub Means, who I think is the front runner to be the Saints possession guy based off of that roster right now. It doesn't look like Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen has the Saints' interest right now. They targeted Peoples-Jones with these guys still out there. So I don't think it's a bad pickup. I'm not going to sit here and criticize the signing. I wonder out loud, I wonder why the Saints didn't address this type of player earlier in the process. Maybe not the draft, because they had just so many needs to fill. I understand that, but earlier in free agency, like prior to the draft, didn't even bring in guys for a look. So I do wonder what Peoples-Jones is going to be able to contribute.
Right. I'm not sure either. I'm gonna bring up your question in a minute, Jimmy Gumbo, but let me throw this one up here too. I think Wilson, if he doesn't have a fork inning yet, he should. I think that's the problem. I think Cedric Wilson just doesn't have any wheels left anymore. Yeah, and I think that's why he has struggled as much as he has. I used to like the kid. I can't think of his name right now. Gallup, I think his last name was.
Michael Gallup. Loved him.
Dallas. I liked him a lot from Dallas, and he fell off the earth too. And that's the problem with receivers. They hit a wall, and they never come back from it. Very, very few receivers make it into, getting close to 30. They seem to hit some kind of wall, and they have those 1 or 2 years. It's just unbelievable. And then all of a sudden they just fall off the face of the earth.
People talk about running backs and the almighty, the dreaded 30 cliff. I'm with you. I see it more in receivers now. And, when they hit a wall or when they have like a really down year, you're waiting for them to come back. And more often than not, they don't. running backs, on the other hand, we've seen them, be at least moderately productive in their 30s, or come back from an off year to at least be moderately productive. With receivers, like you said, we'll see them have a down year, and we'll wait for it to come. Wait for them to come back, and oh, maybe it was just bad quarterback play or a bad offense. No, they just don't come back.
Yeah, and it's usually injuries. Injuries is the key that starts it off, but sometimes it's just a lack of production. Joe Horn fell off. He really did. When you got Drew Brees in here, and when you had Sean Payton in here, Joe Horn just was never the same as he was when he was with Aaron Brooks. And I don't know what it was other than maybe age. And yeah, he got nicked up and he got hurt a little bit. And Sean infamously told him at the Dallas game, see, we don't need you. With Jamal Jones and Mike Carney getting 4 touchdowns. But yeah, he really, but I have to give Joe Horn credit. He's the one that gave Marcus Colston his nickname. He's the one that called him Quiet Storm. But Eric Martin, I'm looking at him right now on TV, and Eric Martin was another one. He was doing well. The Saints let him go after the 93 season, and I think he played 1 year at Washington, but you never heard from him, and he was done. Devery Henderson was another one. He was done too when the Saints let him go. Lance Moore, they all, and some of it is age. I give you that. Some of it is age. But it's just something happens to receivers that they just can't come back. Michael Thomas with the injuries could not come back from it. He was never the same guy again. And yeah, you can blame quarterback play all you want, but some receivers, they still, if they're productive, they still can make things happen with bad quarterbacks. But not him. And it's frustrating. So, Jimmy Gumbo asked a good question. I've done this in the 70s with the Saints. Gone back and looked at the people they drafted and looked on the board to see who was left. And it's easy to do it the 70s Saints. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
So easy. Because I could have had a blindfold and picked names out of a phone book, and I think I would have picked better players than what some of the players the Saints picked back then. But it's one of the problem you have with the redrafts and stuff is you're playing a 2020 hindsight game,
right?
Because you can look at guys and say, yeah, you should have taken this guy, but you read the draft reports on them, and you're going, they turned out a lot better than even the draft experts thought. But there are some guys that what I always do now is I save my drafts that I make, my little mock drafts, and I stick them in the draft book, and then I go back and look at them in 5 years or 3 years and say, okay, what guys did I want and where are they now? And a lot of times I'll see, oh, look, this guy never even made it in the NFL. So my claim to fame is I got Tyrone Hughes and Jimmy Graham right. That's the sum total of the players I nailed, I mean, that weren't first round picks. I mean, obviously there were some first round picks that I liked that, that ended up doing extremely well, or the Saints did end up drafting them. But getting late day 2, day 3 guys, especially, very, very few guys.
Well, I had, and again, I'll go back to 2023. First of all, I had them selecting both Michael Thomas and Von Bell in 2016. Had them selecting Marcus Williams in 2017. Had them selecting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in, 2019? I think it was 2019. Yeah. So, I mean, I'll pat myself on the back for those. But 2023 draft, I'm not like some of these guys that put out 7 mock drafts. I do two. And in 2023, I had Brissy right. I had Foskey right. I had Kendry Miller right. I had Saul DeVary right. And anybody that gets an Old Dominion pick right deserves pats on the back. I had A.T. Perry right. The only one I didn't get was Jordan Howden. But what's that say for my draft analysis? We just got done talking about Kendry Miller and A.T. Perry and Nick Saldiveri and Isaiah Foskey. Hell, I suggested Isaiah Foskey might be defensive rookie of the year. That's how much I like that pick. So no, like you said, Alan, it's so easy for any of us to do, to go back in hindsight. What I did, and I think I did like 2 separate pieces on it in back-to-back years. In Sean Payton's last 2 years. For so many years, there was Michael Thomas and then who else in the receiving corps? Sean Payton would rely on undrafted, striking magic over and over again with undrafted guys. So I would go back in Sean Payton's drafts and, come to find out, okay, they could have had T. Higgins instead of this guy. Deebo Samuel instead of this guy, Terry McLaurin instead of that guy. So, I mean, I had like 9 receivers listed, that were either 1,000-yard guys or, pro bowlers or all pros. So with me, it's all, and we talked about this on draft night too, you, me, and Brendan. It's so easy for all of us to work up our draft favorites. And you and I are guilty of it too, Alan. We have been in the years we've known each other. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. But folks, what you got to remember is, don't fall in love with the player. Use the logic for the position. Like you understood why the Saints targeted an offensive tackle. You understood why the Saints grabbed a quarterback in the second round. Don't get caught up on your own scouting views of I like Shedeur Sanders better than Tyler Shough. Well, how many years did you spend as an NFL draft scout or coach? I mean, and I'm not criticizing any of you out there, because the number of years you spent doing it are probably the same number of years I spent doing it. So don't fall in love with the player. Just look at the logic behind the pick. The Saints needed offensive line. They needed quarter, et cetera, mainly because they didn't draft well at those positions before. So, I mean, if you want to blame anyone, don't blame the media guys putting out the pieces. Blame the Jeff Irelands and the college scouting departments and the guys making the draft picks.
Well, I was going to say Stutzman's my guy this year. That's a guy I had targeted to the Saints a few times when they did take a linebacker.
You did.
I liked him a lot. I didn't know if they were going to get him. I had Campbell, obviously, in the first round if they traded down. So, I mean, that's an obvious one. But Stutzman was my guy, a day 3 pick if I'm picking a linebacker in day 3. We'll see if I'm right about that one. There were players that I loved in the first round the Saints did not take. Greg Olsen is one of them, because I was like nuts about getting Drew Brees a tight end for the longest time. And I still feel that even though he had the great year in 2009, Greg Olsen, and taking Greg Olsen over Robert Meacham probably would have been a better move for the Saints. You don't make the trade for what's his name, for Jeremy Shockey if you've got Greg Olsen on your team. So there are guys out there that I've liked and I wanted the Saints to get, and those are the obvious ones. To me, the key is, who do you see in the 3rd and 4th and 5th rounds and stuff that you like that end up being productive players? Because that's the key to any draft. If you get the 1st and 2nd round right, which the Saints haven't, but if you get the 1st and 2nd round right, you're about halfway there to getting a good draft class. But it's getting that 3rd round right. It's getting that 4th round right. That's where your draft is either made or broken. The year the Saints, I had 1986 highlights up here a while back, but the year the Saints took all those running backs, 1986, Dalton Hilliard,
Mm-hmm.
Barry Word, Ruben Mays. Those were all second and third round picks. Dalton
Yep.
Hickey was a second round pick. Ruben Mays, Barry Word were third round picks. I think what's his name? The kid from Jesuit and Holy Cross College who ended up playing in Italy, Gil Fennerty.
Yeah.
Who went to Italy in the CFL before he came back to the Saints. I think he was a fourth round pick. I have to go back and look. But I mean, those running backs all ended up producing for the Saints at one time or another. And Barry Word, because he had a cocaine problem, once he got clean, went to Kansas City and was a productive player. So, I mean, but that's the key to getting to drafting well, and that's what the Saints have not done. They have not hit on those middle round picks. And it's only made worse because they're not hitting on the first and second round picks either.
Mm-hmm.
Alante Taylor seems to be a good pick, but if you're not hitting consistently in the first and second round, you got to get your depth out of your third round. So that's the hard part when you talk about redrafting and getting it right. You got to get it right the first time around. Speaking of second round, all the Saints draft picks are signed except for Tyler Shough.
Mm-hmm.
How big of a problem is this? Second round picks seem to take longer to sign because they quibble over guaranteed money now, and some of them want that. They want more years added because the first rounders get 5 years, the second round I think gets 4, and everybody else gets 3. But they want more guaranteed money. And Tyler Shough, you're counting on him being your starter. He signed a waiver so he could practice at rookie minicamp, but now OTAs are starting. He hasn't signed yet. What's going to happen with this? And this is something to be concerned about.
I am a little bit concerned. I'm annoyed more than I am concerned. And the reason I'm annoyed is because, unfortunately, Tyler Shough has the bargaining power here. Because Derek Carr's not on the team anymore for all intents and purposes. And Spencer Rattler, you're talking a day 3 pick, and if I'm if I'm Shough's people and I'm in the negotiating room, and Kellen Moore, you're the coach that drafted my guy to run this offense, so we want this money because we know how important we are to you. And it is important because you're talking. Fortunately, everybody is going to be learning a new offense. It's not just the quarterback coming in. So that's the Tyler Shough's advantage. That he's not in a Spencer Rattler position where he's walking into Clint Kubiak's offense last year. Or the better example is Jay Kaner the year before, walking into Pete Carmichael's offense, but everybody had been there with Carmichael for years and years and years, so they knew that playbook like the back of their hand. Well, that's not the case this year, but again, you're going to be talking about a step up to the NFL level. And if more complicated NFL defenses, coverage schemes, pass rush, blocking assignments on your guys, hot reads for your receivers, just getting to know your receivers, where they like the football, what their favorite route combinations are, et cetera. It's all about repetition, repetition. And if Tyler Shough is not on the field with those guys, I have no doubt that Tyler's going to come in great physical shape. But until he's signed, he's not going to be able to get those repetitions. So, it is a concern for me. If you believe he's going to be your starter, your opening day starter, then you want him on that field as quickly as possible.
That's my biggest concern is, you want him to start week 1, or you're hoping he's in a position to start week 1. You got to get him. You got to get him in there, and you got to get him in there in these OTAs, during the installs, working in this stuff, learning this stuff in the classroom. Because if he doesn't sign until right before training camp, or maybe, God forbid, a worse year, first week of training camp, he's going to be very far behind. So yeah, I want to get him in as soon as possible. He needs to be in as soon as possible because without him, the Saints are really screwed. And that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning of the show. This is not a veteran coming in who knows the basics of an offense. Every NFL offense is somewhat similar enough that they can do the translation. I can cross-reference these plays to know what we're supposed to do. The verbiage may be different, but it's basically this play. It's a sail route. It's a combination route. It's whatever. Okay? I understand that. I know that from being in different locker rooms. I know what I'm doing. A rookie doesn't have that experience.
And I've been around to read NFL defenses.
Yes, exactly. I understand. I can grasp this quickly. A rookie's head's going to be swimming. And the famous line from Peyton Manning, "Dad, no one is open," when he's talking to Archie, because in college football, people are wide open. In the NFL, you got to throw people open. That was the problem Rattler had last year. Rattler couldn't find open receivers because he was looking for the wide friggin' open guy, and he's not there in the NFL. And if you think he is there and you throw it, those guys break on those balls so fast that they pick it off. They're baiting you to throw that ball, especially if you're a rookie. So, there's a huge concern for me on this. And I grew up in an era where players routinely held out. It was common that some veterans even signed out, but it was common rookies didn't sign until either right before training camp or a week or so after training camp got started. It's tough. I don't like it at all. I really want them to get this deal done because he needs to be in those OTAs. He needs to be in there getting the installs. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully this gets resolved sooner rather than later. Bob, what do you have going on for the Bayou Blitz this week?
We got nothing. We're not going to have a show this week. I know.
Okay.
Brendan Boylan, he's not taking a page out of yours or my book. You did a show on your anniversary. I am notorious for doing shows from the beach on a family vacation during my anniversary. Brendan and his young wife Katie are celebrating their 1-year anniversary away this week. So he asked me, he's like, "Hey, would you mind if I took a week off, or if we took a week off?" And I laughed and I said, "I'm not the person that you need to ask, 'Hey, do you mind?' questions. You need to ask that to your spouse." So we're taking the week off of this week, which allows me to get more acclimated with the computer systems over at Saints Wire. So that way I'm not bugging John Sigler. "Hey, do you mind if I send you this article and you attach all the fluff and get published, because I don't know how to do this computer crap yet." So hopefully that'll allow me to get a little bit more acclimated on the media end while we take the Bayou Blitz off this week.
Well, it's funny because, I've done shows on my anniversary because my wife's a school teacher, high school teacher. And, so obviously we can't do anything on Tuesday nights because she has to get up at 4:45 or 5:15 in the morning. So, she has no problem doing that. We try and pick a weekend before or after to do something like that. So I can, and it's been 30 years, so I can do that kind of stuff now. But I guess young love, new love, the honeymoon's still going on. You're gonna want to do these things on that night, and at that time. And we tried to save the top of our wedding cake to eat a year later. It still got freezer burned. It wasn't edible. Which was a shame because our wedding cake was really, really good. So, happy anniversary, Brendan. Enjoy it. It's still the fun years. It's not that my wife's not fun. We're still crazy about each other. It's just that life happens, Now you're how's the meme go? When you were a kid, Your punishment was you got spanked and sent to bed by 9 o'clock. Now that you're an adult, what do you want in life? You want to get spanked, sent to bed? Go to bed at 9 o'clock. Getting sent to your room is not a bad thing anymore.
No.
So anyway, well, thank you guys for sticking with us. OTA start this week. I think it's the June 10th, 11th, and 12th is the actual mini camp. I'm not.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, because that's a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next month. So it's 3 weeks from today. That'll be the mandatory mini camp. The full team will be there. And then after that, it's the 6 weeks before actual training camp. So hopefully Tyler Shough signs in by then. There'll be some stories coming out during OTAs, but I'm not going to make much of anything, because it's shorts and shells.
Yeah.
It's just a question of who's showing up, who's healthy, who's not. Taysom Hill, somebody to watch. Oh, last question, and this is totally irrelevant, just popped in my head. They're going to allow NFL players to participate in the Olympics flag football team. And the question was, what players from the Saints roster would you want to play in a flag football league for the Olympics?
I don't want any of the Saints to play because I want them ready for football. But if I was a flag football league coach in the Olympics, I would want Rashid Shaheed. No doubt. I would look at the Saints roster, and if I could pick one guy, Rashid Shaheed is at the very top of my list. And second would be, I could see Alontae Taylor doing well, but that's a distant second. Rashid Shaheed is the guy I want on my flag football team.
My guy would be, Rashid Shaheed's a good one, but my guy would be a healthy Taysom Hill in flag football, because except for him trucking over other teams, other players, he could throw a football for flag football, and he could outrun guys to those corners and stuff. So he would be an interesting flag football participant, but that's about it.
That's a good one.
But he'd have to be healthy. I mean, he can't run right now, but yeah, just, Taysom Hill from a couple of years ago. Oh yeah, that would be fun to watch out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part is he probably could run backwards, in front of, like, say, the Algerian team or something, and he can give that shit-eating grin he gives all the time. So I would watch the Olympics for that. In the meantime, guys, hopefully no bad news comes out about the Saints. Bob, enjoy your week off. I'm glad you're over at Saints Wire. Hopefully this works out well for you, and look for all your stuff. And we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.